and welcome to the Oddity Archive, the show that just can't seem to stay out of trouble. So, once again, I have somehow managed to run afoul of the YouTube reviewer Geekland community, and as penance for my actually still unknown crime, I have to perform a bit of community service. And presumably, given my history with old AV gear and media, what I've been sentenced to do is to create a video that is or can double as a public service announcement on this stuff. So, with that, today I am going to step out of character and we're going to just take a look at the basics of maintenance and basic repair on old AV stuff. So I guess you could kind of call this the official Oddity Archive guide, idiot's guide to retro AV, because you're not going to find a bigger idiot than me, so I've been told. So anyway, let's start with the thing that I get asked about the most, and that is, how do I take care of my old VCRs? And, well, it just so happens that very recently, when on a thrift store jaunt, I found a circa 1984 Sanyo Betacord Betamax unit, and the good news is that it had a tape inside left by the previous owner so I could test it, and it, operative word, seems to perform all the basics. The bad news is, as you can see from this footage I shot in the store, it's got a bit of a personality. Well, given that I knew I was going to do an episode on this stuff, and it was on sale for a mere $3.50, I figured I'd pick up that beta cord you just saw. And this way you can see the cleaning and maintenancey and, if necessary, diagnostic things happen where they're actually needed, because otherwise this episode might have been just me pointing at stuff, because I have this awful habit of taking care of my existing equipment. But anyway, once again, this is a Sanyo Betacord Betamax unit from about 1984, and the Betacord name is just the words Betamax and record mashed together. It is not its own format, which I'm sure you already knew. This is a bottom-of-the-barrel unit. It only has mono sound. You can only set one event on the timer at a shot, and actually it's so old school that you have to open up the lid and fine-tune channels, especially for UHF, channels 14 and up. So very low end, and also it will not play tapes recorded in B1 mode, which was the original playback speed for Betamax when it first came out in 1975. But anyway, getting back to business here, what you're going to see with this overall sequence also applies to VHS and U-matic, or hell, maybe you're one of the 3 people in the world with an 8mm video tape as opposed to film deck. So nothing is exclusive to beta here. Now, I haven't actually truly tested this yet, so maybe it would be in our best interest to start with that. So, if possible, when testing out an old piece of gear, I'd recommend using some junk media just in case it tries to eat it. So what I've got here is a tape that is home to somebody's home VHS dub of an episode of the old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon, which is now readily available and cheaply available on DVD. So, if on the off chance this gets eaten, it's not like we're losing anything important. So anyway, let's turn on the TV and let's get the tape in here. If I can even see what I'm doing. Alright, so let's stick it in here. It doesn't seem to want to take the tape too easily, as you saw earlier. So it might have a belt issue, but I have, at least at the store, I was able to get it in there. There it goes. Alright, let's go up to the TV here. Sorry for the glare. Well, I don't remember this part. Oh, there it is. Okay, so it's got that going for it. Let's try to fast forward. Okay. Rewind. Yeah, it's faltering a bit there. Still waiting for it to start back up here. There it goes. There it goes. It's just a little funky, a little slow on that front. Okay. Let's get the tape back out. Okay, so right off the bat, for all intents and purposes, it seems to play more or less okay, but I think it's getting about due for new belts. And as it just so happens, I've run into this problem many times. And a lot of times with old gear like this, the belts are pretty small. And say you've got maybe a tape deck or something that just doesn't want to play. It powers up and everything, but it doesn't want to play or rewind or what have you. Well, here's a cheap and easy way to see if it's just the belt. You can open it up, you can find the belt, and take it off, and invariably it'll be just a hard piece of nothingness. But what you can do is you can take, what I do is I bought a bag of assorted rubber bands, because these, invariably you'll find something the right thickness, or flat, or round, or whatever, and something you can just stick on long enough to test. We know that this does work, but I do think it needs belts. And also, you can buy belts online. Sometimes you can buy kits and make your own, and there's more specific ways to do that I am not going to go into here because that's not really the intent of today's show. But I've also heard of people that maybe you've got a belt that's only just a little bit hard. I've heard of people boiling belts, you know, in hot water. I tried that once for an 8-track belt and it didn't do anything, but I've heard for some people that works. It didn't do jack for me. But say for my pneumatic deck, I wasn't able to actually get another belt for it. So what I did was I took out the belts and I used this stuff. It's called Rubber Rejuvenator. And you're going to want to do this outside because this lets out some serious fumes. But you can, if nothing else, you can spray this stuff. This is really meant for printers, for the rubber rollers on a computer printer. And you can spray it on there, you know, put it on a paper towel and then put the belt on top of it and spray it a bit. And it should get a good amount of its elasticity back. So that's just one thing to think about if you are having belt problems. Alright. So I guess it's getting close to time to opening this thing up. But let me just say, full disclosure here, even though I hadn't really truly tested this thing yet, I did open this up once already, just so I would know what I'd be up against. And I haven't actually done anything yet. So there you go. Anyway, what you're going to need for this little project, and you're going to need quite a bit of stuff. One thing is contact spray, just canned air. Pick it up at Home Depot. Or not Home Depot, what's that place called? Office Depot. Office supply stores. You might get it at a hardware store. I don't know. Anyway, you will also need the highest grade isopropyl alcohol that you can get. Operative word, isopropyl. And the best you can get just off the shelf here in the state of Colorado is 91%. So I think you can get that in all 50 states. Just off the shelf. So it's perfectly fine. I mean, if you have something higher grade or can find it, fantastic, but it's not important. So let's see. You will also need some of these things, and now we're getting a little more obscure here. This is a chamois tipped cleaning stick. Let me try and get the camera to focus here. And it's just that. It's a bit of a chamois cleaning cloth glued onto a stick. And these things, you can't get them in the stores, unfortunately. So how I get them is I buy them on eBay. I get them for $7 for a pack of 10. Here's an unopened package. Free shipping. And that's how I do that. And that's what we're going to be rubbing up against the main head drum, you know, the main thing for the video with. And let's see, what else are we going to need here? We're going to need Q-tips, just good old-fashioned Q-tips for everything but the main video head. Now, for those curious about those old head cleaning tapes, you know, you'd stick it in and it would, like you saw in my box earlier. I've always felt that all those things do is just rearrange the dirt on your VCR. And at this point, at 10, 20, 30 plus years old, they're probably no good at all. But anyway, let's open this up. And I'm probably going to have to take a cut here because I don't know how I'm going to pull this off sitting where I am. But most of these things have 4 screws, 2 on each side, or on other things like, let me scroll up to my RCA VHS deck. That only has 3, and they're all on the back. And I think most later RCA ones are like that. So we'll have to take care of this. And they're almost always Phillips head screwdrivers, so you'll need one of those. And what I use is, I actually just bought a kit of electronics screwdrivers, and you can just take the heads out and mess around with it that way. But anyway, let's take a cut here so I can actually get the lid off and stuff, and let's take a look at what we're up against. Most VCRs don't have a bunch of stuff getting in the way, you know, trying to keep you from the guts to clean it out. So I guess this VCR is a bit of an anomaly on that front. So I've already gone through and I've taken the screws out of everything that's holding us back. So on the top layer, it's the circuit board holding us back. Everything's still attached, so this could get real interesting. And then there was a plate down there also that was in the way directly. It's a bit out of the shot right now, but there was a plate just over this neighborhood keeping me from getting to the guts. And I'll get the camera down there somehow, some way. But that's not really the concern right now. Our first concern is this. That's not glare, that's dust. So let's grab our canned air here. And this is, I tend to be pretty conservative with this stuff. I tend to give it as little as possible. But you want to use this. Common sense prevails. You just don't want to touch too much of this stuff. You know, run the risk of breaking things off that were soldered on. You know, all that great stuff. So anyway, let's give this a couple little quick bursts of air. And then this is going to be really interesting. Down in here, you can see all sorts of dust on here. So this will kick up a nice cloud, I'm sure. Oh yeah. See if I can't chase out some of that dust. Okay, so this is going to be interesting as well. Let's try and take a look at the heads, or mainly the video head. So what you're looking at right now, if I can hold up the circuit board. I'll have to use probably arrows in post-production for this, but the tape runs along the bottom half of this thing. You can see the slit in there separating the two halves. That's where the tape runs on something like this. And I lied a bit earlier when I said nothing was exclusive to beta here. A lot of beta decks have stationary heads, stationary video heads, and realizing that, and I was just talking to my mom the other day, and I told her I was going to be making this episode, and she said, take our VCR and clean it for us. So I have actually two to do now. And this might be a little easier to get to. So if you see here with the little lines, that is a more traditional head, and it spins freely. And in there you can't really see it, but there's really, really little teeth in there. And that's what latches onto the video and makes things all pretty and all that great stuff. So I've got two of these to clean out, and this is the more traditional one. Alright, I guess I should take another cut before I get started here. Alright, I'm going to do my best not to block the shot here. I make no guarantees. But what you're going to want to do first is you're going to take your alcohol and dunk your chamois stick in it, and just, you know, knock it against the sides of the mouth of the bottle so it's not dripping. Then what you're going to want to do is you're going to take your stick, and it doesn't matter which side, it's whatever you prefer, and you're going to want to just rest it flat along the head, and then we're going to advance the head by hand just a few times. Of course, common sense here, unplug everything first. So let me try and do this without blocking anything. Okay, so I'm just resting on it, and the head will struggle a little. Again, just minimal pressure. You're going to want to, the corners of the chamois are going to be your friends here. Do not move up and down, because then you can break stuff off. So I've actually, I think I've done a full rotation or two. This one, I wasn't too worried about this. If it were bad, there'd be black stuff built up on there. But that's how that works. Okay, so now let's try the beta, and this could be a lot of fun. So with a stationary head, there's nothing to advance by hand, and so you just kind of have to do your best to rub along the head. And if you, I'm going to have to try and get the camera out of here. This is not a good angle. Okay, so if you see this little assembly with the screw sticking out the top, that's going to be where the tape gets pinched. Now, getting back there is not an easy thing to do, so I would actually say not even really worry about it if it's a stationary head. Just be a little more generous with the alcohol, and since this is still clean, I'm just going to use the same one again. And so we're just going to try and run along the side here. I will, again, do my best not to do anything stupid or catastrophic here. Yeah, that might be about as much as I'm going to get with this one. This one's coming up with a little bit more stuff. Come on. Come on, camera. Right here on the corner. It's not bad. I was expecting a lot worse. Okay, so let's take another cut here and we'll start playing with the other stuff. Alright, we're back at the VHS again, and full disclosure here, I did go back and, you know, not having the camera in the way, I did a little better job and got in there a little deeper with the beta So unfortunately, I'm just kind of at the mercy of what I can show you here. It's amazing all the things I don't factor in when I make these. Alright, so now what we're going to try and do here is we're going to try and clean things like the ACE assembly, audio control erase, all the rollers, all that good stuff. So let's see if I can get in here and show you the ACE assembly. Right here, this, come on camera, this black thing's right next to the screw. That's the ACE assembly. And usually VCRs have metal rollers, but sometimes they have rubber rollers. And if you're using, or rather, if you're trying to clean out an audio deck, the rollers are invariably going to be rubber. And I'm probably going to take some crap for this, but when they are rubber, I still use alcohol on them, because even though they can help eat away at rubber, you can replace a roller. Can you replace what you're trying to transfer or just enjoy? So that's a call that you would have to make personally. I do it because, well, like I said, I can replace a roller. I can't necessarily replace the media, especially doing some of the stuff I do for archive here. But anyway, ACE assembly, there's a metal roller here. There's another metal roller just to the left of that. And there's one right in there. And alright, once again, you're going to want to take another hit of the alcohol and then just rub it around the mouth of the bottle, which I know is all blurry there, just because you don't want it dripping. Again, I repeat a lot. And this also applies to audio gear. So you're always going to want to clean left to right. It's going to be the shortest distance, and it's going to get the most stuff off. And it also runs less of a risk of doing any damage. So let's do this. And this is one of the easier parts. Yeah, just little short strokes up and down a couple of times. And let's see if I can get the Q-tip back in focus. It's coming up clean. My parents evidently don't use this a whole lot. Alright, let's take a stab at the rollers here. And these you can just kind of go around and just, if you're next to something important, you don't want to touch it. It's not going to be the end of the world if you do. Okay, we're still coming up pretty clean here. Let's see if I can get down in here to some of these other more obscure. There are a couple more in there that I just can't get to with the camera, so I'll have to do those by myself. But again, it's nothing that's too much of a problem. The last two are down in here. I'm working on the bits that grab the tape and then come out along these two little tracks here. Alright, so this one should actually be done. Like I said, there was nothing wrong with this one to begin with. So this is one of those big sad moments of fixing up this old stuff. Let me just finish the previous thought here from the last bit. After you're done cleaning this, and I did go back and took another stab at the deeper parts I just couldn't get to with the camera. I cleaned it out, and if you live in a dry climate, you should be good to test again in 5 to 10 minutes. If you live somewhere more humid, you might want to go grab a bite to eat or something, or there's certainly no problem with leaving this overnight. The belts are dying on this thing, but worse yet, this is why we use junk media, folks. So anyway, I'm going to take another cut here. I'm going to re-spool this. I'm going to take one more stab at this, but this is getting to a point where you just have to make that hard decision. Do I want to continue to pursue this, or am I just going to call this a loss? And given the way this has been acting, I'm going to call this a loss. Certainly if you're using something more common like a VHS instead of a beta, you're definitely at more liberty to say, yeah, it's just not really worth the time and effort. But let me try this one more time. Alright, well, I have it kind of quasi-functional. It does keep trying to play games with me. So this is one that I think I would normally call a loss, because what I would have to put in time and effort to make this work again, I just don't think would be worth it. Even for something like a beta. I mean, they're not that rare. You might have to go on eBay. But it's, I think this is one that I would have to say is a fail. Yeah, a definite fail. Alright, let me hook up the VHS. I guarantee you I've done a better job with that one. Alright, redemption time here. Okay, this one really didn't need much of any work on it, but let me just show you that I don't habitually destroy VCRs. Alright, so we're hooked up. I've got one of my little public domain VHS tapes here. Hey, it took it, because, you know, the belts are good and stuff. There we go. And of course this is a cheapy little public domain tape, so it's not the greatest quality anyway. But it does work. No, this is not the one dubbed in Spanish. Alright, let's take this back out here. Lovely. See, I don't habitually break these things. Anyway, since I'm here, let me finish up a few thoughts, since I wasn't able to get the beta cord quite back up and functional. As you saw, the thing was really dirty. So, for example, if I were to try and clean the lid here, it's got all sorts of marker and stuff on it. So, here's what I use if I were to actually go through with this. I don't think I am, given that I think I'm calling that beta cord a lost cause. Window cleaner. Just normal old Windex. And, of course, you'll also... me and my creaky chairs. You'll want some paper towels. And for some things, you might actually want to use the alcohol. Again, depending on what it is, if it's something sticky or gooey or whatever. And for example, the beta cord, which let me swing around here, it still has the price tag on it. Glad I didn't pay much for it. No, I didn't pay that much. For that, I'll use an adhesive eater like Goo Gone. So that's how I do things. And if I want to clean, say let me get this back in here. Say this area is all scratched up and stuff. Then I use acrylic cleaners. So what I use, and you'll see this stuff again in this episode, I use Novus, and it comes in a kit of 3 bottles. And I'll discuss this in greater depth, but to get out little scratches, or even moderate scratches, the fine scratch remover will work. I'll show you how that works on some actual media a little later. Alright, we're done with this, thankfully. Hopefully my embarrassment is done for the day. Let's take a look at some media stuff. For whatever reason, tape-based media, especially consumer blank videotape, has a way of sometimes decaying, or maybe if it's kept somewhere too humid, molding over and or melting onto itself. Of course, if you happen to stick a tape like that into your machine, get it out and then clean out the machine as soon as possible. But as far as doing something about the tape, the best bet, for me at least, and certainly if you live in a dry climate, is to leave it in the driest spot possible. And this is where patience kicks in, because I'd recommend for probably a few days, maybe even a week. But that is, in my experience at least, a way to make it workable again and not have to sacrifice anything potentially. Now, a more extreme method, which I would only recommend if you're trying to rescue something, trying to back it up, that would be to acquire a food dehydrator and, I guess you could say, bake the tapes. However, this is only a temporary solution generally. It might work for a day, so again, you're going to want to do it straight away. And it does increase the chances of your tape biting the dust for good after that. Again, I don't recommend it unless you're just trying to rescue something. And other hindrances from old media can come from broken splices, missing pressure pads for audio tapes, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm not going to do any repairs here, but I will show you what I use and how I take care of these things in a basic situation. So, say I rewound this videotape, and the leader broke off. So to open it, of course, on VHS, you just hold in the little button. And so, say I rewound this, and the tape just came off, and it just kept spinning around on this reel. So what I would do is, like with pretty much any videotape, you got screws holding it together, and you'll want to be careful so to not lose the tape, and then you'll have to open this back up as well, and you'll want to lift the top off, and generally the tape will go attach back into the reel. But the thing is, in my personal experience, I don't have much luck trying to open up the reel and do that again. So what I found, as cheap as it sounds, is to tape it back to the spot at which it would be going back into the reel, and just tape it back on with some Scotch tape, and then put a post-it note on the tape or the box or whatever saying "do not rewind all the way." Because, worst comes to worst, if you rewind the tape, and I'd recommend using external tape rewinders if you can for any video stuff, the worst comes to worst, it'll break off again, but all you have to do is just get it off the leader. It's only going to be on the leader, and then you can just reattach it. And of course, you use the underside of the tape as opposed to the play side. So, not this stuff, but if you must, maybe the underside. But there's usually enough leader on a videotape that you can fix it up and not destroy the shell. It's a compromise, but I've found that that's what works for me, and it causes the fewest problems in the long run. As for audio cassettes, if you were to have a broken leader, if you're lucky, you'll have audio tape that's held together with screws, and you can just get into it and actually sometimes truly reattach it. Sometimes you can just unhinge them and get it back in. Unfortunately, most audio tapes are glued together. So here's where things become kind of a pain again. For something like this, take a thin, real good, sharp razor blade, and this could take you a long time. You might want to go over it, over the span of a few days, and just try and work it apart, right along the seam. And then when you're done, maybe you have a spare tape that is held together by screws that you're willing to give up. If not, you might want to screw it back together. Again, we're getting into territory where it's more for preservation purposes. Say you want to rescue something. If it's just something mass manufactured like this Arlo Guthrie album, which is still in print and readily available, and I could get a used cassette, I probably wouldn't even go there, but you can do that. And you can also cut down, say, God forbid the tape itself breaks at some point, and this has happened to me on stuff I've been trying to rescue. This does mean you have to handle the tape a little, but sometimes it's just the price you have to pay. Try and use tweezers when possible. But if you can get the two parts of, the broken part and the stuff that's still on the main reel out, you can cut down a little piece of just normal old Scotch tape, household Scotch tape, and stick it on the underside, right alongside. You don't want it sticking out. So if the tape is thinner than the Scotch tape is thinner than the audio tape, that's perfectly okay. And that should at least get you far enough to rescue whatever you're on. I'm sure you were expecting to hear much deeper answers from me out of this. You can do all sorts of stuff. Say the pressure pad fell out on this tape. If you still have the pressure pad, I know some people don't like this, but you can just take it and take some crazy glue and reattach it to, there's a plate underneath here that's the same size as the pad. It's sticking up right now with the pad on it, so you can't see it. And I don't have any tapes handy with a missing pad at the moment. But you could do that. And if you don't want to do that, let me show you another piece of junk that I have. You can take felt, some pretty reasonably heavy-duty felt, like maybe an 1/8 of an inch thick, if you can find it, some fairly sturdy stuff, and you can cut that down and reattach it. Or what I've done recently is I found this 8-track repair kit, and I'll use it for audio tapes as well. But in this kit, if I can even open the thing, is a little baggie of hard felt pads. And I'll just take a slice off of it and then super glue it back on. Of course, this is actually meant for cleaning on this, but I found that these are sturdy enough that they work. So sometimes you just kind of have to create your own solutions. And as for 8 tracks, I'm not really going to go there because I did an episode on that some time ago. But basic recommendations, I prefer 8 tracks with these little 3 little notches and go in there with a screwdriver, and you can usually pop it open. Otherwise, you could very well be playing the razor blade game again, and that's no fun. And in that episode, I discussed things like getting to the pad and taking care of the rubber roller and all that good stuff. So, just thought I'd do that real quick. Alright, next topic. Say you have a CD or a LaserDisc or a DVD that needs some love. Now, if it's scratched beyond a certain point, there's those little machines, for CDs and DVDs at least, out there that literally sand kind of a spirograph pattern onto the disc. I only recommend those as a last resort. I don't own it, so it'd be the sort of thing where you've got a disc that's damaged and it's having to make that choice between maybe fixing it but being okay with losing it if you couldn't take care of it. So anyway, what I do for scratched and soiled, for example, LaserDiscs, because I have one handy, is I use the same acrylic cleaner that I used on the VCR face, or that I would have used at least, from earlier, the Novus stuff. And as I mentioned, it comes in a kit of 3 bottles. So number 1 is for just cleaning. It works for fingerprints. Number 2 is for light to moderate scratches. And number 3, which I don't have handy, is really meant for, say, the headlights to a car. So you're not going to be using the number 3 stuff on media. But you will need bottles, usually number 1 and 2, and you'll want some just good old-fashioned tissues. None of the lotion stuff, just normal old tissues. And assuming there's scratches, you're going to want to start with bottle number 2. And this stuff has a way of drying in the tubes, so my solution is I just undid, that's a new word, isn't it? I just took apart, to a point, a paper clip that I can just stick in there, because it always clogs up. And I just poke it, and it should be good to go again. Okay, for a CD, you're going to want maybe about 8 to 10 drops of this stuff on the play side, the underside of a CD, which I happen to have one, but I just wasn't smart enough to take it out. So 8 to 10 drops on that. Of course, you're going to need more for a LaserDisc. So let's go ahead and do this. This thing really doesn't need much love. It's already been taken care of, but it was the worst I had in my possession at the moment. So this, you're just going to want to try and do little dabs. And then it's the whole kind of wax on, wax off sort of thing, you know, the Karate Kid and all that. So once you got it on the disc, you're going to want to spread it around, just like a wax. And if you underdid it, you can always add a little more. So that's not too terrible. It's not quite complete, but for a basic demo, you can see all the lovely stuff on there. See if I can't spread it around just a little more. Alright. And then it's wax off, so you just have at it. Usually going from the center out. You might need several tissues to do this. And it might take you a few passes at this if it's something that really needs some work. I think I need another tissue. There we go. Isn't that pretty? Alright, now let's shine it up a little more and get the excess off of it. So we'll need the number 1 now, so you're always working from the highest to the lowest number, and this stuff is just liquid. And this stuff lasts for, a bottle lasts for years. I've been working on the same bottles since, I want to say 2009. So we'll take a fresh tissue, spread it out, and then we'll just wipe it clean, same way we did earlier. And of course, with all the dust flying around here from earlier, this could be interesting. But this is, it looks alright. It did have some smudges on it. I don't know if the camera ever picked them up, but I think as best as I can tell from where I'm standing, I think I did alright. And again, like I said, this also applies to CDs and DVDs. Alright, moving on. Okay, this part is easy, for the most part. Now, I know it's not considered cool to use a lens cleaner CD, you know, these things with the little brush on the underside. But I have found in my own personal experience that these are the only things that are useful when it comes to dealing with mostly CD players, but to a lesser degree standard DVD players, not necessarily a Blu-ray like I've got there. And of course you just take the disc, you stick it in the player, you usually advance it to track number 2 or 3, Of course, read the instructions first to find out. Let it play for just 10 seconds or so, and all is well, generally, at least in my experience. I've had CD players and the CD burner lock up on me before. I stick in the lens cleaner for a few seconds, and I'm flying again real quick. Now, LaserDisc players, on the other hand, despite using at least partially the same stuff, you should not have to clean the lens on a LaserDisc player ever. However, if you must, my recommendation would be to open up the player, take the lid off, physically open up the player, not just eject, and then locate the lens, and you're going to need one of the really soft cloths like a chamois, or one of those cloths that you use on the lens of a camera, and you'll want to just breathe, just exhale normally, don't blow on it, just a normal breath on the lens, and then wipe the lens off very gently, and that should do it. Now, the reason for this is that LaserDiscs run at a higher speed than a CD or a DVD, and the lenses were usually coated at the factory with a special protectant. Now, add to that the little bit of friction and air movement caused by the disc spinning around, and with how well LaserDisc players are sealed, 98% of the time, ever having to clean it should be a total non-issue. The only time you'd really have any reason, in my opinion, to concern yourself with a LaserDisc lens is if it's one of the original top-loading ones. I don't have one of those because, of course, you open it up and you're going to expose it to the elements a lot more. Lovely. All right, one more topic. Scratched vinyl is scratched vinyl. There's just nothing you can do about that. You can't fix it. However, dirt has a way of accruing on records, and that much you actually can do something about. So say you just bought yourself an old album at a garage sale or something, and it's totally covered in dust and dirt, and I don't have any particularly dirty vinyl on me at the moment, so a lot of this is going to be more in theory than anything else. This is the dirtiest I could find. But anyway, with dirty vinyl, for starters, you're going to want a static cleaning cloth like you use on a computer screen. And you're just going to want to, I shouldn't even say wiping per se, because you're going to want the cloth to do the work for you, but along the grooves of the record, just, kind of rest it on there and just advance it a little just to get it up, and then flip the record if need be. I'm just going to do one side here. Alright, now here's where it gets a lot more frustrating. Back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, there was this lovely little device called the disc washer, and I have a couple of them actually. And this consisted of a wooden handle with some fabric on it, some corduroy-like fabric, and it had a little compartment, and it would come with a bottle of cleaning fluid and a little brush. But here's the problem. Sometime in the early 2000s, when they started making these again, they didn't use the same fabric anymore. They started putting actual corduroy on it, which the fabric doesn't really run in any one particular direction on corduroy. And that's kind of a problem for something like this, where you want it to be directional, because you're ultimately going to be going at the disc here. But this is one of the originals, and that's the trick, finding an original one. Hit up eBay maybe, and as I said, I have two of them, and just to show you getting 100% original here, one of them still has a bottle of the original formula. Now, I point this out because they changed the formula for the record cleaner at some point. Nowadays, it's something to the effect of, I want to say like 95% water and 5% alcohol. It's not much of a anything of note, but this is the current stuff. But it gets the job done, and I suppose if you're ambitious, you can just make your own. But anyway, let's do a little cleaning here, and we're going to get nice and dusty again. So, with your disc washer, you're going to want to run along the grain and just take little strokes to clean it and prep it. And then to get the dust off, it's going to land on the record, I can tell. You just do that. You see a little cloud go there? See if I can get some more here. Yeah. Alright. Now, you're going to want to take your fluid, and it comes in a dropper, and you're going to want to put 5 or 6 drops on here. Hopefully I can do this without blocking the view. So there we are. Now if you look on the side here, you'll see an arrow. This is the direction you're going to want to run. So this is going to be hard to do from this angle with the camera in my way. But you're going to want to dig a little at the vinyl along the grooves like so, and try and get that fluid on there, which you can see spreading around. You'll want to take a couple of spins, and then you're going to want to turn it up, so you'll be going up the butt, I guess you could say, and start getting some of that stuff back up. Of course, how I had to put this on, it's a little messier than usual. And then after that, you're going to want to use the brush again, but this time when it's wet, you're going to want to go against the grain. And then flip the record over, rinse and repeat. So, yeah, vinyl, I've discussed it before. It's one of those things that it can be cool, but it can be real frustrating. And I guess that's just the moral of today's story. If you want to play with old stuff, you gotta be willing to put in the effort and do your work and be patient and all that great stuff. So, wonderful. And, you know, let me, since I'm thinking about it, let me give you one more point here. Now, when you play the record after cleaning it, and say it skips, the record might still be scratched. It might be a really, really fine scratch that you have to get in there and see, and there's not really much you can do about that. But more often than not, it's going to be, say you had a little rogue piece of dirt in there, and it just managed to lodge itself in the grooves. So you're listening to the record, and it skips. Say it skips around here. Note where it was, stop the turntable, and then you're just going to want to go with your finger and just advance the record until you find, you'll feel a bump in the road. Once you do, make sure you filed your nails first. You're going to want to go with the grooves, with your fingernail, towards you, and see if I can... I'm not actually doing this right now. This is just so you know what I'm talking about. Come towards you with your fingernail and get that dust out and just blow it off, wipe it off, whatever you need to do. So, just something to think about if that happens to you. Anyway, that's it for this very long and very dirty and somewhat embarrassing edition of the archive. Join us next time when I'm engaged in a nice coughing fit from all the dust and all the chemicals and junk that I've had to inhale today.
Please don't break my Atari or you're gonna be sorry. Please don't break my Atari or you're gonna be sorry. If you break my Atari, then you'll break my